Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, aiming to get you genuinely well informed. Have you ever thought about finding not just, a job, but a place, a community where your skills really matter, and maybe there's a clear way to build a permanent life there? Turns out Canada has some really innovative, uh, very specialized immigration programs designed for exactly that kind of thing. And for our deep dive today, we're really getting into the weeds on something specific and I think pretty fascinating, the West Kootenay Rural Community Immigration Pilot, or RCIP.
That's right. The West Kootenay RCIP, it's essentially a tailored pathway to Canadian permanent residency. It's specifically built for skilled workers who aren't just looking for work, but want to genuinely settle down long-term, build a career, a life in the West Kootenay region of British Columbia. And what really jumps out right away is that it's employer-driven.
Employer-driven.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, it fundamentally shifts things. It means local businesses, once they go through a designation process we'll talk about, they're the ones submitting the recommendation applications for potential newcomers. They become advocates, essentially.
Interesting. So our mission today is basically to demystify this whole thing for you. We'll break down how it actually works, who it's really designed for both the employers and the candidates, and, why it matters for the West Kootenay region itself. And just to be clear, all the information we're discussing comes straight from the official program sources, so you're getting the direct story. Okay, let's unpack this then. At its core, what is the West Kootenay RCIP?
Right, at its heart, it's a program designed to connect skilled workers with full-time permanent job offers from these specific designated employers in the West Kootenay. That connection is the key to their path to permanent residency. But the bigger picture, the broader purpose, is really about tackling critical workforce shortages in the area and at the same time, boosting local economic development in a sustainable way. It's a partnership, really, between the West Kootenay region and the federal government, specifically Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC. It officially kicked off early in 2025.
Part of that bigger push to spread immigration benefits beyond the big cities, right?
Exactly, and it builds on past experience.
And the region itself.
Yeah.
You mentioned West Kootenay. This part sounds really compelling. What's it like? It's not just any place, right?
Mm.
It's described as this welcoming area, over 90,000 people, known for these incredible mountains, wildlife, lakes, rivers. Sounds stunning. And the economy isn't just one thing either. Diverse, you said.
Very diverse. Yes, you have the traditional drivers like resource extraction, forestry. They're still foundational. But alongside that, there's thriving agriculture, a growing tourism sector, and actually a lot of entrepreneurial activity. It feels like a place with layers.
Yeah, sounds like somewhere you could actually build a life, not just clock in and out.
Precisely. And that vibrant regional character really highlights the program's long-term goal. This isn't just about plugging immediate job gaps. It's a strategy to attract and, importantly, retain skilled workers, people who will put down roots, raise families, become part of the community for the long haul.
Retention is key.
Absolutely. It builds economic resilience, community well-being. And it's worth mentioning, there was a previous pilot, the West Kootenay Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot. That one saw quite a bit of success, helped over 1,200 newcomers apply for PR, involved over 250 local employers. So there's a solid foundation here.
Okay, makes sense. So let's switch to the employers. If you're running a business in West Kootenay and thinking, okay, I need skilled people, how do I use this? What's the first step in this employer-driven model?
The very first, and honestly the most crucial step, is getting employer designation. It's mandatory. It's basically a vetting process to ensure only eligible employers who are genuinely committed can participate.
So what does that involve? What makes an employer eligible?
Several key things. First, obviously, your business has to operate within the defined West Kootenay RCIP region. Second, and this is a big one, you need to be operating one of the 5 approved priority sectors.
Priority sectors. Okay, what are they?
They are health, education, law and social, community and government services, sales and service, trades, transport and equipment operator, and manufacturing and utilities.
Sales and service. But I heard there's a catch there, something about fast food.
Yes, good point. The program specifically excludes fast food businesses from the sales and service category. And they define fast food pretty clearly. National or international franchise chains, or businesses that mainly use a quick service, counter service model with little or no table service. Think like a gas station selling hot food.
But not regular restaurants.
Correct. It doesn't exclude full-service restaurants, even if they're part of a chain, or your local independently owned cafes or restaurants. The idea is to focus on businesses perhaps offering more stable, career-oriented roles.
Got it. Okay, so operate in the region, be in a priority sector, minus fast food. What else?
You need a track record. Your business must have been in continuous active operation under the same management for at least 2 years. Though there might be some flexibility for, say, a significant new business relocating to the area that really boosts the local economy. And, of course, you need to be in good standing following employment standards, health and safety laws, immigration regulations, no cutting corners.
And the jobs themselves, any specific requirements there?
Yes, the job offers have to meet certain criteria, too. They must be full-time. That means at least 30 paid hours per week. They have to be non-seasonal, so year-round work. Indeterminate, meaning no set end date, permanent positions. And the work itself, at least 75% of it needs to happen physically within the West Kootenay RCIP region.
That's quite a list. Seems like they really want committed employers offering stable jobs. What about training? I think you mentioned that.
Absolutely. There are two mandatory training pieces for employers. First is intercultural competency training.
To help create welcoming workplaces.
Exactly. Foster inclusivity. The second is IRCC employer onboarding training, which covers all the program specifics, rules, responsibilities, the whole process. And importantly, it has to be an owner, manager, or supervisor directly involved in hiring who completes both trainings. You need the certificates for the designation application. They also strongly encourage others on the team who work closely with newcomers to take the training too. It helps build that supportive environment across the board.
Makes sense. It's about setting everyone up for success. Now, something that caught my eye. Employer caps. Why limit how many workers one employer can recommend? Seems counterintuitive if there are shortages.
Yeah, it might seem that way at first, but the caps are there for fairness and program sustainability. Basically, smaller businesses, those with 1 to 65 full-time employees, can make up to 3 community recommendations per calendar year. Larger businesses, 66 or more full-time employees, can make up to 6 recommendations per year.
So it spreads the opportunity around.
Precisely. Prevents 1 or 2 huge employers from dominating the program. But there's a really crucial exception here.
Oh.
These caps do not apply to job offers for 2 specific roles. Healthcare aides, that's NOC 33102, and early childhood educators, NOC 42202.
Reflecting critical shortages in those areas.
Exactly. It shows just how high the demand is for those essential workers in the West Kootenay community. They need as many as they can get.
That's a smart adjustment. Okay, so we've got the priority sectors, but what about the actual jobs within those sectors? Are there specific occupations they're looking for?
Yes, most job offers need to align with a specific list of approved priority occupations. They select up to 25 of these each year. Common examples you might see are things like cooks, carpenters, transport truck drivers. Each has its own National Occupation Classification, or NOC code, and a required TEER level. That's training, education, experience, and responsibilities.
And how do they decide which jobs make the list?
It's not random. It's based on solid data and input, local labor market information, what employers are saying they need, regional economic development plans, community consultations, and these lists aren't set in stone either. They review the priority sectors annually and the priority occupations quarterly, so the program can adapt as the region's needs change.
That sounds really responsive, but sometimes needs pop up unexpectedly. Is there any flexibility for a vital job that maybe isn't on that main priority list?
That's a really good question, and yes, there is a little bit of wiggle room. A small percentage of the total recommendations can be allocated to what they call emerging needs occupations.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, a few conditions have to be met. The job still needs to be within one of the 5 main priority sectors. The employer has to be already designated and, ideally, have already successfully hired someone through the program in a priority occupation. And crucially, the West Kootenay RCIP folks themselves have to determine that there's a genuine, demonstrable emerging need for that specific role in the community. It's like a safety valve for unexpected shifts.
Got it. Okay, let's pivot slightly. Let's talk money. Compensation is always a big factor for anyone considering a move. Are there specific wage requirements employers have to meet?
Absolutely. And this is another area where the RCIP adds an extra layer, which is quite interesting. There are dual requirements. First, you've got the standard federal wage requirements. The wage offered must meet or exceed the range for that occupation listed in the Government of Canada's Job Bank based on the NOC code and the specific region. If there's no regional data, they might use provincial or national rates.
Standard enough. What's the second layer?
The second layer is specific to the West Kootenay RCIP. All job offers under this pilot must provide a minimum wage of $20 per hour or meet the job bank wage for that occupation, whichever amount is higher.
$20 an hour minimum or more. Why local minimum?
It's a conscious decision reflecting the reality of living costs in the West Kootenay region, which can be higher than in some other areas. It's about ensuring newcomers have a fair shot at actually succeeding financially, settling in comfortably, and, wanting to stay long term. It prevents a potential race to the bottom on wages for these roles.
That's a significant commitment to the workers. And does that base wage include things like bonuses or top-ups?
No, and that's an important clarification. Things like wage enhancements or top-ups, which you sometimes see for roles like early childhood educators or healthcare aides, cannot be counted towards meeting that minimum base wage requirement. It has to be the core hourly rate.
That's very clear. Okay, a really robust system on the employer side. Let's switch perspectives now.
Yeah.
So, if you, our listener, are a skilled worker, maybe you've connected with one of these designated employers, you have a potential offer. What do you need to bring to the table? What are the core eligibility requirements for a candidate?
Right, let's break that down. First off, as you said, the job offer itself. It's got to tick all those boxes we mentioned. Full-time permanent from a designated employer in a priority occupation. And critically, the job offer must align with your skills, your qualifications, your work experience, and even your language test results. It has to be a genuine match.
Okay, job offer first. What's next? Language.
Language ability is definitely key. You need to prove how well you can speak, read, write, and understand English or French. This is done through an official test approved by IRCC. For English, that's typically IELTS General, CEL-PIP General, or the newer PTE Core. For French, it's TEF Canada or TCF Canada.
And is there a minimum score?
Yes, and it depends on the skill level of the job offer, the TEER level. For higher skill jobs, Tier 0 or 1, you need a Canadian language benchmark, or CLB, score of 6 or more. For Tier 2 or 3 jobs, it's CLB 5 or more. And for Tier 4 or 5 jobs, you need at least CLB 4. Basically, the more skilled the job, the higher the language proficiency needed.
Makes sense. And how long are those test results good for?
They're valid for 2 years. And here's a crucial detail. They must still be valid on the date that IRCC actually receives your final permanent residence application, not just when you get the community recommendation. So timing matters.
Good tip. Okay, job offer, language. What about education?
Education is the third piece. You need one of two things. Either a Canadian educational credential, like a high school diploma, or a post-secondary certificate, diploma, or degree from a recognized Canadian institution. Or, if your education was outside Canada, you need the foreign equivalent. And to prove that, you need an Educational Credential Assessment, or ECA report.
An ECA report.
Yes, it's an assessment from an organization approved by IRCC that verifies your foreign education is comparable to a Canadian standard. And like the language test, timing is important. The ECA report must be less than 5 years old when IRCC receives your permanent residence application.
Okay, job, language, education, experience must be in there too, right?
Absolutely. Work experience is number 4, and this applies to most applicants. You generally need at least 1 year of full-time paid work experience within the last 3 years. That's equivalent to 1,560 hours.
Can part-time work count?
Yes. Part-time work can count if it adds up to those 1,560 hours over the relevant period, but it absolutely must be paid work. Volunteer work or unpaid internships don't count towards this requirement. The experience also has to align with the skill level, the tier, of the job you've been offered. For Tier 5 jobs specifically, the experience must be in the exact same 5-digit NOC code. And it's not just about the job title. Your experience needs to cover a substantial number of the main duties listed in the official NOC description for that job.
What about self-employment?
Generally, self-employed experience doesn't count. The main exception is for certain licensed medical professionals. Otherwise, it needs to be experience working for an employer. And if you gain that experience in Canada, you must have had valid authorization to work at the time. You'll need proof too, reference letters, pay stubs, tax documents, that sort of thing.
That seems fairly standard for immigration programs, but I think there's something unique here about work experience, something for local graduates.
Yes. This is a really significant feature, kind of an aha moment for some. There's a major work experience exemption specifically for international students who graduated from a local institution. Now, this is very specific. It only applies to graduates of a public post-secondary institution located within the West Kootenay RCIP region. Currently, that means only Selkirk College.
Okay, so graduates from Selkirk College might not need that 1 year of work experience. How does that work?
Right. If you completed a program of 2 years or longer there, you could be exempt if you studied full-time, graduated no more than 18 months before applying for permanent residence, and you physically lived in the community for at least 16 of the last 24 months of your studies.
And for shorter programs like master's degrees.
For master's or doctoral degrees that were less than 2 years, you need to have studied full-time, graduated no more than 18 months before applying, and lived in the community for the entire duration of your studies.
That's a huge advantage for local grads. Are there any catches?
A few important ones. The exemption doesn't apply if more than half your program was distance learning or online from outside the community. It also doesn't apply if your program was primarily focused on English or French as a second language. And if you were on a scholarship that requires you to return to your home country after graduation, you wouldn't be eligible for this exemption either.
Still, it's a powerful incentive for Selkirk grads to stay local. Okay, what else is on the Canada checklist?
Fifth is settlement funds. Unless you're already legally working in Canada when you apply for permanent residence, you need to show IRCC that you have enough money to support yourself and your family when you first arrive. The amount depends on your family size, and it's based on 50% of the low-income cutoff, or LICO, stats for rural areas. The RCIP program actually strongly recommends that employers check if candidates have these funds before even submitting the community recommendation application, just to avoid issues later.
Proactive planning. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Anything else? Legal status.
Yes, number 6. If you're already in Canada when you apply to IRCC, you absolutely must provide proof of your valid immigration status, like a work permit or a study permit. And this is critical. People in Canada on a visitor visa, or those without any valid status, are not eligible to get a community recommendation under this pilot.
Why is that?
It's a practical reason. They can't apply for a work permit from inside Canada based on the recommendation alone. And given that IRCC processing for PR can take, potentially over a year, it's very unlikely the original job offer would still be valid by the time they could potentially get status. So you need to have valid temporary resident status already other than visitor.
Right, avoids impossible situations. So we've got the job offer match, language, education experience, or the exemption, funds, legal status. That covers the technical stuff. What ties it all together? You mentioned an intent to reside statement.
Yes, and this is really important, maybe the most personal piece. It's a short written statement from the candidate explaining why they genuinely want to live in the West Kootenay region long term. It should show you've thought about it, you know something about the community, about the job beyond just the duties. What steps have you taken to prepare? Why this region? It's not just a formality, it's a significant factor in the community's decision whether to recommend you. And it has to be your own words, your own genuine intention. It's your pitch to the community.
Okay, so that's a comprehensive look at what both the employer and the candidate need. Once all those pieces seem to be in place, how does the actual application process move forward? Who submits what?
The employer submits the community recommendation application package on behalf of the candidate to the West Kootenay RCIP administration. They review it using a pass-fail system based on all those criteria we discussed. And importantly, they process applications on a first-in, first-out basis.
First in, first out. Is there a way to mark your spot in line?
Yes, that's where the lock-in date comes in. This is the date that the RCIP office receives the complete application package, not just parts of it, the whole thing. This lock-in date is important for a couple of reasons. It's used by IRCC later to determine the age of dependent children, and it basically sets your place in the processing queue.
So completeness is key.
Absolutely crucial. If an application is incomplete, they'll return it, and you don't get a lock-in date, you lose your spot and have to resubmit when it's complete.
That could cause delays. Now, you mentioned document validity before language tests, ECAs. What if something expires after you get the community recommendation, but before you submit the PR application to IRCC?
Yeah, that's a scenario people need to watch. Remember, the language tests, valid 2 years, and the ECA reports, valid 5 years, must be valid when IRCC receives the permanent residence application. So even if they were valid when you got the community recommendation, if they expire before you submit to IRCC, you'll need to get new ones. It's the applicant's responsibility to track that.
And passports.
It's highly recommended that passports are valid for at least 12 months when you apply to IRCC, just to cover their processing time and avoid potential hiccups.
What about those priority occupation lists? If they change quarterly, what happens if the list changes after the employer is designated but before the recommendation application goes in?
The application must align with the priorities that are in effect at the time the complete community recommendation application is received that lock-in date again. So if the priorities change, the job offer might no longer be eligible. The timing has to line up.
Okay. So the employer gets the community recommendation for the candidate. What's the very next step?
The candidate then takes that recommendation letter and uses it to apply directly to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, for permanent residency. It's really important for everyone to understand that the community recommendation is a huge step. It's essential, but it is not a guarantee of permanent residency.
Ah, so IRCC does its own full review.
Exactly. Both the community level, RCIP, and the federal level, IRCC, conduct their own thorough assessments based on their respective criteria. You have to pass both.
Okay. Now, what about working while you wait? If a candidate is already in Canada, maybe on a work permit, and they get the community recommendation and apply for PR, can they keep working? Waiting for PR can take a while.
Yes, and this is a really valuable feature of the pilot. Once a candidate has received the community recommendation and submitted their PR application to IRCC, they become eligible to apply for a special 2-year RCIP specific work permit. It's an LMIA exempt permit, code C15, designed specifically to bridge that gap, allowing them to continue working for the recommending employer in the region while the PR application is processed.
That provides crucial stability, but just to reiterate, this isn't an option for someone on a visitor visa, right?
Correct. That specific RCIP work permit is only available after receiving the community recommendation and after submitting the PR application. It's not for visitors, and it's not available before those steps are done.
Okay, that's clear. We've talked a lot about how to make an application successful. To round things out, what are some of the common reasons an application might not get recommended by the community? Where do things tend to go wrong?
There are definitely recurring pitfalls. A big one is simply the job offer not being in a current priority sector or occupation. Or maybe the occupation list changed. Another common issue is the employer not actually being designated yet, or perhaps they were designated but haven't kept up with the requirements, like the training. Then there are issues on the candidate side, failing to meet those federal eligibility criteria we detailed. Maybe the language score is too low for the TEER level, the education doesn't have a valid ECA, or the work experience doesn't quite match up or isn't sufficient.
Documentation issues, too.
Very common. Incomplete applications, missing documents that will get it returned immediately, losing the lock-in date. Sometimes there might be concerns about the genuineness of the job offer. Does it seem like a real position? Or doubts about the candidate's actual intent to live and stay in the West Kootenay region. Remember that intent statement, it matters. And finally, it could just be bad timing if the recommendation cap for that specific sector, occupation, or even that particular employer had already been hit for the calendar year. The program has limits.
So a lot of factors need to align perfectly. We've certainly taken a deep dive into the West Kootenay RCIP today, and it's really clear this isn't just some generic immigration stream. It feels like a very carefully crafted pilot program trying to strike that balance between meeting genuine regional economic needs and really helping skilled newcomers integrate and hopefully thrive long-term in a specific community. It's quite fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
We've seen how that employer-driven piece works, the very specific criteria for both the businesses and the individuals, and that strong emphasis on demonstrating real commitment to putting down roots in the region. You know, this pilot, it really does highlight the kind of detailed thinking that can go into connecting workforce needs with actual community building. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? As different regions face unique economic shifts or demographic challenges, how many more of these highly tailored, community-specific pathways to permanent residency might we see develop? Pathways designed not just to fill jobs, but to genuinely weave new talent into the fabric of specific places, fostering new lives and strengthening those communities.
That's a great point, a provocative thought indeed. So for you listening, what stands out to you about the West Kootenay RCIP? Reflecting on this, what kind of challenges or maybe opportunities do you foresee for programs like this in the future as they try to balance those very specific local needs with broader national immigration goals? Something to chew on until our next deep dive.